Hello, everyone out there. My name's Mike Roach. I'm a captain with the Cherokee Nation Marshal Service. Today, I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the McGirt decision and how it's affected us in law enforcement in the 14 counties, also known as the Cherokee Nation Reservation at this time. Um, I don't have one of the attorney generals with me here today, so I'm going to try to relay some of the information I received from her back in March. The Attorney General is Sarah Hill here at the Cherokee Nation Marshal Service. Shannon Buell is the marshal of our department. He's a cabinet level position along with Sarah Hill. He asked me to do this meeting today to try to discuss some of the things and difficulties we've had with the McGirt decision and try to get you guys informed. The thing that I will need from you guys is probably some questions to you'll have to type those in. I can't hear you if you try to speak them out loud. So if you'll type them in, I'll try to answer your questions as we go. I've got a short PowerPoint just to kind of keep me on track as far as getting you guys the relative information that you may need. Um, a little bit of background history on myself. I grew up here in Tahlequah, always been in Tahlequah. Had several jobs, ended up as a marshal about 12 years ago, and worked my way up through the ranks to captain. Um, I've done a little bit of everything as far as the things I'll tell you about in the marshal service here that we get to. I spent a lot of my early years in the casinos with working cases out of there, so fraud, embezzlement, sex crimes, things like that that happen on those properties. So worked with the feds a lot in those situations. Worked with the state a lot. The crazy thing is, it's like we've always been able to do Indian country law at the Marshal Service. We've always practiced it that way. We always have to check and see who did what to who and where they were standing when they did it to justify which jurisdiction the crimes would have to be filed in court for. So it's nothing really new to us. There's just not enough of us to do it over the whole 14 counties, if that makes sense to you. Um, I'll start with a document that Sarah Hill had sent out to our department, and I'll just read it briefly so that you have some idea of what the McGirt decision was and how it affects us. In a document she sent to me back in March of this year, the background for McGirt was uh, it was a horrible offense. The defendant McGirt, he filed a claim that the state did not have jurisdiction over him when they arrested him because his attorney felt that the reservation of the Muskogee Creek Nation had not been disestablished by Congress. And it worked its way through the court systems and finally came back down that he was right. So um, that started the ball rolling. So the first tribe in the 5 civilized here in our area was the Muskogee Creek Nation. And I believe they have 12 counties that they cover, somewhere around 12. And we share a western boundary with them with our reservation. I have several friends over in the Creek Nation and the Light Horse side of it over there, and ours was coming down the pike. Our case was going to be the Hogner case that would give us the same ruling of law that Cherokee Nation was still a reservation for criminal jurisdiction purposes. And anything other than criminal jurisdiction purposes is still to be determined by courts. So that's one of those hot topics. I see a question over here on the side. Okay, yeah, I'll get right to that, Diana. So in my PowerPoint, I'll discuss that we only have 38 marshals total right now for the reservation. The reservation covers about 14 counties. So it's a large area to try to cover with that many folks. And I'll get into some of the other duties that the marshals have had to adopt since this decision. That being said, the short answer to your question there is if you have an emergency, you call 911 and any officer that's available can respond. At this point, we've cross-deputized with everybody: game wardens, OHP, county sheriffs, city police departments, you name it, we've cross-deputized them. So no one is free from the law in that aspect. So you call your locals if it's just something you want to make a report on. They have the same capabilities as we do. They file their paperwork in our court system if it is determined to be a tribal case. I hope that answers your question, Diana. Um, Back on the decision side of it, we got to Hogner, and we had a little breathing room before Hogner took over for us, and we were going to face the same circumstances that the Creeks did. Deputy Chief Daniel Wind over there, he came to my office one day, and he and I sat and chatted, and he was telling me just how bad it is going to get. His guys were just swamped with calls when it changed to reservation for them, and it made us take a good long look at how we're going to do business. Probably at that time we had about 27 marshals. We've done pretty good at hiring, getting up to about 38, and we have about 4 still in background checks before they hit the street. So we've plussed our numbers up a little bit, but the Creek Nation they were trying to get to around 100 officers for their 12 counties, and we're thinking we're going to settle in somewhere around 80 for 14. And the difference is the way that we do business. Hogner happened for us in March, and we were kind of ready for it as best we could be on the law enforcement side. We'd spent a long time getting our cross deputization cards in place with the other agencies, and what that is it's a contract or compact between us and a state agency, the Cherokee Nation, and a state agency, and it allows their full-time certified deputies to possess our commission card and practice arrest folks for Cherokee Nation violations. Our laws are pretty close to the same as the state of Oklahoma. They've been working on those diligently, and I think there's still some work to do on their left, but they're getting them as quick as they can in the court system. But the major things are all covered. It's just some of the weird stuff that comes up, and they have to look at, make sure it works for the tribe. But so a lot of times when an officer pulls someone over, they have no idea if the occupant is an Indian or a non-Indian. And in our world, that's the way we categorize. Indians are a classification through Congress, and Indian country is a classification through Congress, and there are 572 federally recognized tribes in the United States of America. And any Indian, so any one of those 572 recognized tribes that happens to be on our reservation and commits a crime falls under the jurisdiction of ourselves and sometimes the federal government if it's a major crime. Excuse me. So that being said, if they pull over, someone out in one of the communities in Fairfield or Sally Bull or Kenwood, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's an Indian person driving the car. It could be your friend borrowed the car, whatever, has legal reason to be in there, and vice versa. An Oklahoma license plate doesn't mean that that's not an Indian driving the Oklahoma vehicle in that case, or operating the boat on waterways. So there's no good way to tell who you're dealing with until you simply ask them if they're Indian or not when you make contact with them. And all that really does is help us kind of sort out which court we're going to go with. And if there's a crime that's committed, what offense has been made and where can we file that paperwork, and possibly who has the authority to make the arrest. For the Marshal Service, we carry tribal, federal, and state credentials. Now, some of our guys are actually task force officers with the FBI, and we got a couple that want to maybe do some ATF stuff. And those guys will have some federal arrest powers that we don't use much with us. With our federal credentials, we get that from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and it's a special law enforcement commission. So it's a really tough background check. It checks a lot of things, credit, all kinds of things. And you have to have good credit to be a marshal. I don't know, it's crazy, but you do. And they, you, each one of our guys have to possess an SLEC to be a marshal. It's one of the hardest jobs probably to get in the area because of some of the stringent background. So it's not like we can just go hire a bunch of people that are already cops and go, hey, we're just going to go steal Adair County's police force or the Cherokee County's police force or Rogers County or whichever. Those folks still have to go through our training program. They still have to get adjudicated in their background. They still have to go through an FTO process. And a lot of times, that it takes a long time. And generate a marshal, it's almost a year at this point from the day one is hired. If they hadn't gone to academy, especially, it's a little quicker. If you've been to the academy, probably get you on the street in about 6 months from the day we hire you. So we knew that we were not going to be able just to jump out there and hire a bunch of people. So if you guys have any questions about the Hogner-McGirt decision further than that from the Attorney General's office side, and if I can answer that, I'll be happy to. Just type up a question. That being said, I think I'm going to start my PowerPoint so I don't get off track here for you. All right. Hope you guys can see that wherever you guys are at. Let me go up here to the top. Once again, I'm Captain Mike Roach. I put this thing together just yesterday off the top of my head of a few things that somebody might ask, what is the Marshal Service in this sort of thing? And then I can kind of talk about how we've had to change with the McGirt decision. And it's going to cover basically patrol functions, investigations, and our special applications branch. As far as patrol goes, nearly every marshal that starts with us starts in patrol. Patrol is kind of the entryway into the Marshal Service. And then there are different ways you can go from there. Some people go into the special applications branch, which it's a lot of special teams stuff. And then some folks go over into investigations, and they do a little higher level police type work and work a lot more closely with the feds. But as in general, as far as what you might expect as a patrol officer at the Marshal Service, we've had a lot more walk-in type reports. People will go to their local sheriff's office and they'll say, well, I don't know, if you have any concerns, maybe you should just go over and talk to them at the Marshal Service. So people will just drive to the office and knock on the door and sit in the lobby and wait and see if they can let someone come out and talk to them and guide them through whatever their questions are. We still have a response to emergency calls. Like I said, you pick up your phone and dial 911, any uniform is liable to show up, including us. It's just whoever is available at the time. We get a lot of requests for support from the local law enforcement agencies. This can be anything. They may have maybe a large crime that's gone on, or be tied up on a scene for a particular amount of time. Maybe it's a bad accident or a homicide, or they're just spread out all. Sometimes it's funerals, and they need us to come in and take calls in their department. And our guy will send a couple of guys into that community, have them switch over and scan their frequencies, and they'll answer calls just right alongside our counterparts in the state. So that's some of the requests for support. The other thing is we have a lot of instructors, so we end up teaching cleat courses for them so they can get their hours every year and keep them qualified on their firearms, things like that, defensive tactics updates. So we do a lot of support to the other agencies like that. We handle a lot of emergency detention orders. And what that is if a person ends up at a hospital and is determined to have a mental health condition and a doctor confines them to a treatment program, we show up and take custody of that person and transport them to wherever that facility is that's going to care for them. Those things can be all over the place. So you'll see Marshal cars out by Oklahoma City. You'll see them down by Texas. Sometimes as far away as Mississippi, if we haul one down there, if we have to do them. So we go a lot of places. The courts, they, I think Sarah said early on they were not used to handling a large volume of court cases, and it increased exponentially with the tribal court cases, with the Hogner decision. So along with that, we have court duties. So some of the marshals are bailiffs. They stand in there as bailiffs and work the security, gate to come in there, metal detector, that sort of thing. A big thing is transporting or prisoners or sitting with them at the hospital. So if any police agency arrests anyone inside the Cherokee Nation and they happen to be Indian by definition, and they end up needing to go to the hospital or needing to go to court, we transport them. So that's a pretty big duty in itself right there. The courts try to put all the transports on one day, and they do the criminal docket on Tuesdays. So sometimes we transport 30 or 40 people during the day doing that. So marshals are busy transporting a lot of times. Sex offender registration. Before the Hogner decision, there was checkerboard land that we would deal with sex offenders on all across the 14 counties, and now it's everywhere. So that we had to beef that up. We had to sign a couple of marshals to make sure sex offenders are being registered and tracking them down if they're not, taking them to jail. So that took a couple of our marshals. Community events, we love to do them. We like to bring all the toys out and let the kids crawl through them and take a look at it and all that. We don't have time at the moment. There's just not enough of us to go around to do too many of them. We try to hit a few, every quarter as best we can and make time to do that, because it's very important. It's just there's not a lot of us to do some of those things. We do have a school resource officer at Sequoia. He stays very busy up there taking care of the kids up there on that campus. And so we, have to take care of Sequoia. We got a bike patrol team, and those are mountain bike type bicycles. And we use those parade large crowds, things like that. There's a group of the guys and gals that are trained on those, and they arrest people off the bicycles, and sometimes we were able to ride bicycles to school with kids, just out as a community training kind of thing. The education department relies on us pretty heavily to take care of the kids on the Remember the Removal bike tour, when they go to Cherokee, North Carolina, and ride the Trail of Tears back here to Tahlequah. And that's about a 3-week detail that we usually end up sending, a couple of officers to do that sort of thing. Out of respect for, some of the people that always need us, or elders, or, when we can, we try to do all the funeral escorts that we're asked to do. I think they're busy on one today. In fact, guys are out working one of those, I think, as we speak. Of course, when we have elections, those things come up there by constitution. There's a few things that the marshals have to do, set in certain areas, make sure nothing's tampered with. patrol the voting polls and district, make sure no one's doing anything they're not supposed to. And then I just left miscellaneous in there. We could talk forever on all the weird things the Marshal Service does, but basically miscellaneous. Investigation side of the house is it's a different animal. They're usually picked from patrol officers, some of the people that do really good reports and are really good at investigating crimes and follow up and people friendly and things like that, and don't mind to get in there and talk shop with sex offenders, and for the greater outcome of getting them in jail, they end up in investigations. And investigations is a big area of work. They sometimes their cases take a month or two, depending on if the witnesses cooperate or getting forensic exams lined up or interviews lined up. Or sometimes people go out of state. Sometimes we have to go out of state to interview them to finish up cases. So those guys and gals over there are really busy, and they work a little closer with the FBI and the Northern and Eastern District Court systems for the United States. Our reservation is split in two pieces. Speaking of that, Highway 412, roughly anything above 412 will be in the Northern District of Oklahoma as far as the Federal Bureau of Investigation is concerned, and anything below 412 is in the Eastern District of Oklahoma. And so they have different attorneys and different, just like they have two different offices. So we have to determine which one of those it goes to and work with that group. They generally deal with a lot of the sexual assaults, child abuse, any type of interview and interrogation, a lot of follow-up from the stuff that the guys generate on patrol. So an example might be someone would start a case, they would respond to it, and then it would turn out that they would need to interview someone the next day, and they're asleep during that time because they work at night, so they hand that off to investigations. And let's see, since the McGirt ruling, they kind of get some cases back from the feds, and the feds say, I think we're going to let the tribe prosecute this one. I think they have a better chance of dealing with it this way. So sometimes the federal government turns it back over to the tribe, and the Attorney General's office looks at how to prosecute that from there. And a lot of the casino crimes go through there, and then they just have miscellaneous duties too. A lot of times that's dignitary protection for events. You'll see a lot of the investigators are dignitary protection. I don't know if I can take a look at this chat right quick. Okay, everybody still able to hear me, I guess. I wasn't looking at the messages. Okay, moving on from investigations, maybe, let's see here. The Special Applications branch, one of my favorite branches. It's made up of the Special Operations team, the SOT team up there. We've had that thing since around 2001, and it's always growing and adapting to new technologies, new techniques, and new trainings. We have a really good grant writer at the Marshal Service, and we get a lot of things on grant purposes. And the thing about that, it's really nice, but to satisfy the grants, you also have to use them. So you can have all those toys, but you actually have to go and use them and then report back what you've used them for, and that they're being used for what you got the money to buy them for with. So that eats up a lot of training time. A lot of things have to be driven. We have all kinds of stuff that falls into that, but the SWAT team is a free asset that if a local jurisdiction has a situation they cannot handle, they call. I'm the commander of the SWAT team. I have two co-commanders that work with me, below me, and a team leader. And if they call any of the four of us and it meets the criteria for a SWAT call, then we'll activate the guys and girls, and they they're made, those people are just collateral duty. They're investigators, they're patrolmen, and they all come together, and we go plan an operation and execute a warrant or whatever it is we have to do, catch the person we got to catch. And once we get them in custody, we turn the scene back over to the local jurisdiction and go back about our day. So the SWAT team is a required training monster. We train every 2 weeks on something. We shoot a lot, we drive a lot, and we do a lot of operations a year, and very good at it so far. Always improving and always training on a national level. So I'll check the chat again. How many cases has the feds passed down to Cherokee Nation? Okay, let's see. Let me see if I can answer that one. I know at one point they handed us around 200, and they picked them up and they put them in a big box, and they're down at the investigator's office, and then investigations is working their way through those along with the ones that come into them naturally. So when they pass them back down to us, our investigators have to go through it and apply Indian country law to it to see if it's something that the tribe would actually have jurisdiction to step in and do. And if they do, then it's something they go ahead and pick up. They set it in a pile, and if they don't, then they're like, well, they send it back and go, hey, no, it's exclusively federal jurisdiction. And then sometimes it might work out that it can be sent back over to the state under certain criteria. I thought I saw a question about, I don't know where it went, but how do you determine citizenship? So to determine citizenship, you need to be a member of a federally recognized tribe. So, there are tribes, there are state recognized tribes, and there are tribes that are federal recognized tribes. And then some are just seem like they're made up. I see weird Cherokee Nation tribe stuff like out of Tennessee or somewhere, and I don't know nothing about that, but they'll come up with some sort of thing and say they're from Tennessee. It's like some online thing. And so, those are fraudulent. Of course, there's the Eastern District band down there and the Katuas here locally. And, those you get membership cards. So, Katua is a federally recognized tribe. Cherokee Nation, federally recognized tribe. Muskogee Creek Nation, federally recognized tribe. There's others like Arkansas type tribes that don't meet the criteria for the feds, and although they are still Indians, they are not federally recognized by the government as Indians. So those persons would be treated as non-Indians in the opinion of government. So you have to be a member, first of all, and that usually gives you a card of something. I have a card, and it gives a degree of Indian blood on the back of that card. So it says how much degree of Indian that the holder of the card is. And that information is logged in also with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So that's kind of how they determine it. A lot of people say they're whatever tribe, but they can't prove it. And it's on them to prove that they are. So if the Joe Blow police officer is talking to you and you say, oh yeah, well, I'm Cherokee, but I can't prove it. Well, if you have no documentation of it, for the eyes of the law in court, then you're non-Indian until you prove that you are. So they would send you through the state processes along with that. And if you get an attorney and you can determine that you're an Indian, then you can appeal that, and then you can get sent through the Cherokee Nation process in our example. Back on the special application stuff, dive. We have a dive team. We have a few boats. We have about 3, a very big boat, and we do all kinds of diving. We're one of the highest trained dive teams in this part of the country, and we've been deployed nationally a few times, hurricanes and things like that along the coast. And we do a lot of diving, and it's mainly for the body and evidence recovery is what we have a lot of that for. And so we help out when we can with other agencies and neighboring jurisdictions if We'll go up there. We've been a number of time up the pictures looking, trying to help them look for the Bible girls and some of those wells. And we didn't dive in them, but we dropped some cameras down, give them some tips and insight, and try to help out where we can. Let's see, I got another chat up here. When Cherokee Nation arrests someone, how is it determined if Cherokee Nation case or it gets to the feds? Okay. So when Cherokee Nation arrests someone, well, it's a good question. There's some situations Cherokee Nation wouldn't arrest if it was going to go federal. If it's one of the 8 major crimes, which is kidnapping, rape, murder, homicide, the big crimes like that, then it's going to be the federal jurisdiction. So things that happen that are the major crimes, the feds are going to do the arresting. They're actually probably not even going to arrest you. They're going to go for a grand jury indictment, get an arrest warrant, and they'll come find you whenever they get ready to hook you up. So if Cherokee Nation picks up a case and during the course of the investigation we determine that there's more to it than we knew when we first started, that meets some elements that the federal government would like to prosecute on, then we might ship it over to the feds to have them take a look at it, and then they pick it up and run with it. That's why some of those come back to us from the other side. They may not have enough for their criteria or the threshold of what they will prosecute the crimes for. So they'll send it back down to another court that can handle prosecuting at that level, is the easiest way to say that. There's no double jeopardy in those courts. So the Cherokee Nation is a sovereign government. The United States of America is a sovereign government, and the state of Oklahoma by its own rights the same way. And so if someone is prosecuted by the feds and they are an Indian and the crime happened on an Indian reservation, we can also prosecute the same person for the same crime, and it's not double jeopardy. They would serve one sentence and come back and serve ours right behind the other. So it's interesting in that fact, and they can assert their sovereignty like that. Hope I got another one. You guys got good questions. Oh, thanks. Yeah, welcome. I hope that was clear. There's a lot to the Indian country law stuff. It's a 3-day course, but it's we learn it in FLETC when we go to the academy out there. It's a 16-week course, and we're learning that during legal block, and it's specifically how to deal with Indians in the federal system. Search and rescue is a relatively new beast at the Cherokee Nation, and it's really under the Office of Emergency Management, and the emergency manager there is also he's also on our dive and SWAT team, and he does a really good job at search and rescue. He's got a lot of contacts, and he has a lot of equipment. So they have big vehicles, big pulling vehicles, all kinds of equipment in case of disasters, tents and things. We have motorcycles, BMW motorcycles, those the new electric Zero motorcycles, all those sort of things. They get that they can make their way around through the terrain of Oklahoma through here and still maybe be able to hear the person calling for help. That's been the benefit of those little electric bikes. And along with search and rescue, there's a few of us that have been trained for paramotoring, which is it's kind of like a parachute and a fan strapped on your back, and you can take off and foot launch and fly, and you fly around as a person for a couple of hours, and you can cover a lot of remote ground without being on the ground from the air. So we have some aerial capabilities. Got several drones with some heat tracking and things like that help us with lost children. And that's been a really invaluable part of the special applications branch. We also inherited conservation and wildlife. And so anything to do with hunting and fishing rights and things, we have a couple of marshals assigned to that, and cross-deputized with the Oklahoma game rangers. And so now anytime that any marshal or any game ranger or highway patrolman for that matter makes contact with you, they carry our commission. And so they can deal with you in the proper court system, whatever it is, when they make contact with you. So that's been a big help. We really tried to use those cross deputizations so that the public didn't really sense that there was any lack of options for them for law enforcement on the reservation. Natural resource type things come into play there. So anybody that's doing illegal logging and things like that on our resources, or sometimes people are stealing gravel from the waterways and things like that, those conservation guys kind of specialize in that. Let's see. Do you still do the internship before being I don't know what the internship is. I'm not sure what you mean by the internship, if you might be more specific on that. Vehicles, you'll see our guys in almost anything. In general, most of our vehicles are either white or black. The tribe kind of likes to keep it that way. That's the two colors they like. Marked and unmarked, different reasons for both of those scenarios. But yeah, Tahoes, pickup trucks, 1 tons, all kinds of things. A lot of our guys have to be able to pull trailers, to pull ATVs and UTVs and gear or boats to whatever situation we're going to. So they've got a little bit bigger vehicle so they can keep that and all the gear they need in there. With the influx of the previous cases, are those going back through the courts or have they been dismissed? To my knowledge, nothing has been dismissed. The federal system in particular has a hierarchy of what crimes they are trying to get caught up with first, and the others are just pending until the day somebody gives someone a phone call or knocks on a door and say, hey, I know it happened 2 years ago, but it was filed back then, and now we've got around to it. Since it's been pending, now it's time to talk about whatever this is. So I don't know about anything being dismissed with any of those. They're just constantly being evaluated which jurisdiction is best suited to deal with that particular case. Property and evidence lives underneath special applications branch. 14 counties is a big area, so we try to just keep our own evidence, not local departments' evidence. But sometimes we end up transporting that stuff around back and forth to court too for them. And we got drones, boats, and paramotors and motorcycles. Is that? Let's see here. So in this slide here is just kind of some of the things that we had to change with the Hogner McGirt. We currently have 38 deputies, like I said, and there's 4 waiting in backgrounds, and then they'll be put into a training regiment, and maybe we'll see them sometime in about a year, actually on the street. But we took a stern approach to actively using our cross-deputized agencies, like I said. Typically, that is Officer Joe from some other state jurisdiction calls and say, hey, I pulled over this person. I found that they were driving while intoxicated. What do I do? And okay, here's what you do. Do you have this form? No, I don't. So that marshal will email a form to the guy or direct him to a website where he can print off the form for himself, tell him where to send the information, and then that officer takes him to a jail that we have contracts with within the 14 counties of Oklahoma. I got to look at that chat again right quick. Yeah, they do. It is a long wait. Maybe I'll answer some of that in this next portion right here. Um, it takes a long time to train a marshal. There's no shortcut to it. We are not like anything else in the nation, um, not like anything else in the state or in the federal government. We do things tribally. We don't do things the same as the state does, and we don't do things the same as the federal government does. So FLETC, the training academy that I got 6 guys and a gal in right now out there, they're learning how to deal with Indians federally through their 16-week course. When they come back to us in late October, I'll get them in a CLEAT course, which is the state's version of how to deal with non-Indians in Oklahoma, and they'll have to go to that, and that's a 2-week course, and that's maybe in December timeframe. And then they have to learn how the Cherokee Nation does it tribally on top of that. So they have to understand those 3 systems inside and out, back and forth at the spur of a moment, not just for their own work, but for every other officer they come in contact with in the 14 counties. So I'll get to the training portion in just a second. The stern approach we took was our phone started ringing off the hook, kind of like the Creek Nation, my buddy said it would. And they said, hey, we got an Indian doing this over here, and we need you to come down here. And we're like, nope, you're cross deputized. You do it. You have the authority to do it. You have the commission to do it, and we'll walk you through it. We're not showing up. There's not enough of us. There's no way we're going to start trying to take all the Indian calls that come in just because we are tribal cops. They have our commission cards. They can legally do it. They just kind of wanted to, they needed some help. They wanted to know how to do it and that sort of stuff. So it took us our first couple of months. We did thousands of those phone calls, and made some agencies mad. Then I'd usually end up being the guy, or me, or Shannon, or maybe Scott would end up being the guy that would be going to talk to the chief of police, sometimes the city council, sometimes the mayor, whoever it is, and explain to them why we have to do business that way. And then they're usually fine after that. Um, so a lot of this took place officer to officer, and sergeant to sergeant, and then politics and admin to politics and admin. So we often try to teach Indian country law to help them out when we get the opportunity. The jail contracts was quite a deal, because as soon as this case passed, we had jails full of Indians that immediately were our responsibility. Like, just stroke of midnight that night, now all these 500 inmates are yours, scattered throughout 14 counties. So if they need something, that's on us. And so this just kind of talks about that. We transport around 80 prisoners a month on average, and we do about 30 emergency detention orders. Juveniles was another really big deal. We didn't have any contracts for beds for dealing with juvenile delinquents, so contracts are difficult to get, and they take time, and sometimes you don't have time. So we've sat with juveniles in other facilities and just had to just rotate, taking shifts, sitting with them, for instance, at a hospital where they could be cared for, but they were not free to go. So that ties us up somewhat doing that. The Attorney General's office is hiring juvenile affairs officers and probation officers to deal with the probation issue that comes along with the Hogner decision. And they'll have, I think, around 13 to 15 officers for that. And we'll help train those up to the same level as the marshals to a certain point. At a certain point, they'll break off and go into kind of their specialized area, and our guys will continue through their training regiment. And just adapting has been the easiest way to deal with this thing. There's something new every day, and the Cherokee Nation expects us to be the most highly trained and most knowledgeable in this field. So it takes a lot. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of training and a lot of patience to do that sort of thing. We've been hiring as the budget allows here, and men and women alike. It's hard to get a job here. It's not easy. I think a while back, the chief of staff said, "Hey, this is the most sought after job in the Cherokee Nation," and it's you know, they've had more applicants for it than any other job there, and it is extremely hard to get this job. Um, we're looking for the best people. We're not just going to hire people just because we need them. We want the best people for the tribe, and we're willing to take our time and work harder ourselves until we get the numbers where we want them. And decided we're not lowering our standards of hiring at all, just to plus up numbers. So it's when when you're a marshal, you're expected to know almost everything to do with law and Cherokee Nation customs and cultures. And so we still seek that very hard. Um, yeah, some of the training you were talking about, and you were saying an internship. I've developed a new portion. It's almost like an academy of sorts for tribal officers. I think we're going to call that thing the path is what it's going to be called, but it's roughly 200 hours of classroom and practical hands-on that we teach them um, how to do what we do when we get new men and women in law enforcement for the Marshal Service. And the goal is to do it consistently, like have the same instructors, um, get those instructors updated, um, make new instructors out of the new guys, constantly adapt and make sure we're on the cutting edge, not being held back by old traditions or old standards, and make sure we have the most current information available to give our officers so when they hit the street, they are completely trained and we can rely on the fact that we have trained them to do a good job out there. And I think, yeah, post McGirt, we've really just got enough to kind of take care of our own Cherokee Nation buildings and employees and the traditional areas that we used to patrol before that were checkerboard. If they were checkerboard before, they may be trust or restricted land, things of that nature. That's the ones we want to emphasize on the most. So, when you'd asked earlier if you had someone break into your community building, who do you call? Well, if it's one of the areas that we'd always patrolled that is sits on restricted trust land, we want to know about it for sure because that's our primary function is taking care of that kind of stuff. There's no way we could take care of every one of them, every community building inside the 14 counties. Um, hopefully with some of the stuff I was telling you in the numbers that we have, you can understand that there's no way to be out there doing that all the time with taking care of the business of the tribe and the courts. So the attorney general's office and they really rely on us to get the prisoners back and forth to court. The health services really relies on us to make sure we get the mental folks treated properly and get them to the treatments that they need. The juveniles sometimes are they end up out of state or way out in the panhandle or have to be taken here nor there for this sort of treatment stuff. I mean, we are that arm of the Cherokee Nation that does that, and then we do everything else in the gaps between it. Um, Helping our other state agencies and the federal agencies has also been key to us being able to succeed. We've always had good working relationships with the agencies. We've always handled their SWAT calls, their dive calls. The federal agencies, when they need us to come hook up someone in Kenwood and they don't even know where that is, we go and do it. And so we've always got that good stuff. And so we've got a good relationship with them, and it continues to be an asset. They call us when they need us to serve their high risk warrants for the federal government along with the state. And then they take care of some of the other crimes for us on our reservation. And if they need us, they call us for the big stuff, kind of a thing, like the big brother that comes in and makes sure it gets done. Um, with regards to that, I tell a lot of the sheriffs when I have meetings with them, the population of your county elected you, Indian or non-Indian. They voted for you. They expect you to show up and they expect you to do your job. If you're a voting member of a county or city, and Indian or non, and that law enforcement agency is not doing what you feel like it should do, you have every right as a citizen of that county or city to go and let them know about it. We do not try to come in and take over cases for other agencies just for that reason. I mean, they were voted into office there by a majority by that community. They're expected to do a job. And if they don't do a job, they're held accountable. In the state agencies, it would be to OSBI or something like that for failure to do their job. Um, if you find that there's some sort of problem that has gone on that they haven't, you're free to call. We can try to get to you sometimes, I mean, it just kind of depends on the day. And if we have officers available, they can come to just sit and kind of talk you through it. We could come to you in some cases. Other cases, if you want to stop by the office, we have a lot of guys in there uh, behind a computer screen like I am a lot these days. And I'll be happy to come out in the lobby and chat with you and see if I can help you out with your particular problems. Um, Kind of getting down towards the end of it here. So I'll try to quit talking and just see if you guys have any other questions for me that I might can answer. Are there female marshals? Yes, there is. So my wife actually works for the Marshal Service. She works on the investigation side of the house. So she's under the other captain. I'm the captain of patrol, and she's under the captain of investigations, and she's been there around 18 years. Her name's Shauna Roach. And we've hired 2 other additional females. We're always looking for female officers. I think we've got another female officer in backgrounds right now. So I've got one at the academy. I've got one on the street now, and one in background. So of that 42, we'll have about 4. So we could use some more. I don't see any other questions there, but okay, here we go. Oh yeah, yeah. So my wife and I, we actually worked together before we were married in the casino, and we would do interview and interrogation type jobs for embezzlement, sexual assault, stuff like that. It's amazing what females can get out of a suspect, or especially if it's another female, as opposed to a male. They're just invaluable in certain situations, and by the same token, sometimes if they're not intimidated or something by a female, sometimes that male can really drive a point home. So the world is made up of both. So I think it takes both to do the job, to do it correctly. And we've got some really good female officers, and really, really smart and really tough. I thought for sure you guys would have some crazy questions for me. What's the timeline on the 80 marshals? Well, I don't know the answer to that one. Um, I would hope a couple years, you know. In October, we're maybe going to be able to hire a number. Trying to look at somewhere around 20. It's a hard thing for me to imagine another 20 on top of the new folks that we have, and then all that training that has to go into them. It's just another thing that we just have to adapt to and get them on the street. If we were to get that 20 and then maybe by next summer they're on the street, that would be around 60, and then we try to get another 20. We would probably look at having a north and south marshal service type position, kind of along that 412 boundary there. Again, kind of like the feds. I think if we did get 80, you would see them more often in the communities, because 40 apiece in about 7 counties apiece. I think you'd see them a lot more. So a couple years, I mean, that's a guess. Don't hold me to it. It depends on what academies you can get them into and if they have space for them. That's a thing in itself. It's just trying to figure out if you can actually get them somewhere to get them accepted into academy to train. COVID's really been tough, to get them in there. They all have to be vaccinated before they go. So, it's one of the things those guys and gals have to consider before becoming a marshal. Vaccination, you can't go to the academy if you're not vaccinated. It's a federal academy and they require it. So there's a lot of things. It's a difficult job. It's a difficult choice to make, but we do the vaccinations, try to keep the people we come in contact with safe. Well, I've almost made it. It's got like a couple minutes. Ah, maybe if I stop the screen sharing, that'll make it easier. All right. Well, what can I tell you for another 5 minutes? You bet, Barbara, for sure. Um, the Attorney General's office is looking for a few people. Um, like I said, those probation officers, you'll probably see that up on the website pretty soon. Um, they'll be dealing with a lot of the juvenile type situations and looking for possibly a couple of investigators over there of some nature. Um, that group will be attached to the Marshal Service somewhat because of their training and certifications. They'll run a different badge than we do, and they'll have a different person that they answer to on that side. We're basically just keeping them certified, helping them with their equipment, getting them all prepped up and ready to do a good job. What if someone gets in trouble and non-cross deputized officer responds? Well, a non-cross deputized officer, it could happen. There would be a thing that would have to be taken up with the courts because a non-cross deputized officer wouldn't have any authority over Indians. So if he detains you, for example, he or she detains you, for example, and they're not cross deputized with us, then the best thing they could do was call someone that is. That situation could happen for a new officer that comes onto the force that maybe hasn't got his card yet. The contract that we sign between the agencies is full-time officer to full-time officer. And then there's some lag time into when they get their cards. They need their cards, technically speaking, for legal purposes, but they're still actually cross-deputized as an officer with our commission. They're just not in possession of their commission card. It's a technicality on that sort of thing. But the situation that you might run into similar to that is a new officer comes on to work, first day of work, has never been an officer anywhere, and he's just a new guy and he steps into an FTO program and he's not a certified officer. He does not have our commission. By statute, he has to be a certified officer first. So it'd be hard for you to run into one unless it was just a brand new person that hadn't either been CLEAT certified or reserve certified. But I think we've got all the agencies cross-stepped across the board. I don't know if they all have their cards yet. I want to say probably we're at 75% of them have all their cards. Well, thank you very much. I think I'm just about out of time here. I appreciate the questions.